So my project for the day was replacing the timing chain cover gasket and also the timing chain, because may as well, and the harmonic balancer. In order to do that, I had to take off the AC bracket and the mechanical fan thing, the alternator bracket, and basically I had to figure this out myself, because all the videos on the internet that document this process either have the engine already taken out, or it's on like a Grand Cherokee or something where there's way more room between here and there. And the Haynes manual says you need to remove the radiator to do any of this, but I've kind of looked at it and I was like, you know, I don't really see why the radiator needs to be removed. So I did this all without removing the radiator, and as you can see, everything's apart except for the chain, and the radiator's still here. So I don't know why the Haynes manual says you have to remove the radiator, because that sounds like a bunch of wasted coolant if you ask me. I did take off the water pump pulley to get these bolts on the cover back here, but the mystery for today is well, I guess I got a bit of a story to tell. So while I'm telling a story, here's what a timing chain looks like on a 4.0. It's pretty cool. Now I recently went to Florida, and when I came back, the Jeep was leaking oil way more than it usually does. Now it's leaking oil from the rear main seal in the back. I actually got a drip pan under here because it's making quite a bit of a mess. But it was also leaking oil from the front here, from this area potentially, which is, this is the oil pan gasket. It's shared with the bottom of the timing chain cover. But it was leaking from the sides and around here and stuff. So I was like, okay, the timing chain cover gasket is literally the only gasket on this engine I haven't replaced before. I've done the oil pan, the head gasket, the valve cover gasket, these little adapter O-ring things, even the intake and exhaust manifold gasket. I've literally done even these freaking grommet things. I've done everything except the timing chain cover gasket, so I may as well go ahead and replace that. If not to just stop the oil leak, but also to know when it was last replaced, because I don't really have any service records for this thing. Now, when I took this cover off, I was expecting, you know, a gasket to come with it, and well, there's bare metal here, and there's bare metal here. There was no gasket. There was no paper gasket, no RTV, no nothing. I did not scrape this off. I did not clean it. This is exactly how it looked when I took it off. This is the new gasket. That's what it's supposed to look like. But there was nothing on here. It was literally metal to metal. And, well, then I started looking around the thing, and there is an abnormally large amount of grease near the timing cover. And especially on it, you can literally see where the harmonic balancer carved a canyon of grease mountains out of here. And some of these bolts on the cover, I really had to dig for them to find them. I mean, there was a ton of oil grease on this thing. Way more than there is anywhere else on the engine. I mean, you can look at the side here where my new head gasket's been leaking because I didn't do it right. There's grease here, and there always has been grease here, but it's nowhere near as thick as it was in this area here. Now, I think that's because upon taking off this cover, I discovered there was no gasket in here, which is really weird. And there's no way that's how it came from the factory, because this thing has been leaking oil for a long time like this. I know it has to come with a gasket from the factory. There's no way it doesn't. So that tells me somebody's been in here before. Not only that, but this timing chain has 220,000 miles on it, supposedly mind you. There's only this much play in it. That's not very much play at all. I've seen them a lot worse. So the chain and the gears, I would assume also, have also been replaced before. Now, why? When these are known to last literally 300,000 miles. There's no reason to replace them other than just for peace of mind and to know when it was last replaced. You know, may as well. I got the engine torn apart, throw in a new timing chain just for the hell of it. So these have been replaced before, and my other evidence for that is there's supposed to be an oil slinger on this shaft here. It heads out right about to the beginning of this that little, I forget what that's called, that alignment peg thing or whatever. But you can see there's space behind it. There's an oil slinger that goes on here. It's a little metal circle thing, It's supposed to pick up oil and sling it all around in here so that the chain stays properly lubricated. I took off the cover, there was no such thing here. So for who knows however long, this timing chain has not had an oil slinger in it. And you can kind of see the bottom part, this gear looks very well lubricated while the camshaft gear does not. Now, I would assume that there has always been enough oil in here to keep it lubricated enough. I mean, not that this is really something that really requires a lot of lubrication, but I don't really know how the oil gets in here. I don't know if there's some secret passage. I don't know how it gets in here. I just know that it goes back into the oil pan through this gap. So there is supposed to be oil in here. There was no oil slinger. And I have no idea how long ago it was that this was replaced. So for years, I would assume at minimum, at least 2 years since I got it. And before I had it, it sat for a year. The previous owner didn't tell me anything about replacing a timing chain. That seems like something you'd want to mention when you're selling the car. So I doubt he has any idea when, but I don't know. Like, they might have had the whole engine out of here and just decided to replace this just for the hell of it at who knows how many miles. But I do know this is not the original cylinder head. For those unaware, 2000 plus or 99 plus XJs actually are known for having the cylinder heads crack. This one is a replacement out of a 2000 Grand Cherokee. So the thing is though, I don't know when that was replaced. I don't know how many miles the original cylinder head lasted. But this is not the original one. Now I'm thinking, obviously a cracked cylinder head is going to cause some problems for the engine running, and how, you're going to notice a cracked cylinder head. So I'm assuming what happened was they took the whole engine out of here and just rebuilt it just for the hell of it, basically. And when all they needed to do was replace the cylinder head, and I suppose they might have figured while they had everything out of here, may as well put on a new timing chain, but they forgot to put on the oil slinger and the timing chain cover gasket. So for probably a decade now, this has been leaking oil and creating obnoxious amounts of grease on the front area of the engine. Now, why might you ask, would it randomly start leaking really bad after my trip home from Florida? Like, I'm sure it has been leaking for years, but it started leaking to the point where it was very noticeable on my return home from Florida. Now, I think that is because right before I went to Florida, I put a new rear main seal in this thing, and also a oil pan gasket here. Now, when I was in Florida, I went through Georgia, it got stuck in Atlanta traffic, and the engine got way hotter than I've ever seen it. I mean, it wasn't overheating, but it was really hot. And conveniently, I think after that is when both this and the rear main seal started leaking. Now, both of those things require RTV. You have to use RTV here and on the bottom of this to seal this from its separate gasket here, because there's two gaskets. You have to connect them together with RTV. It's literally a factory requested thing. Also with the rear main seal, because this is a 2001, you have to use RTV on the rear main bearing cap, because it's the two-piece seal on the 01 is just a half ring. It doesn't have those additional tabs off to either side like the 99 and prior models do. Now, the RTV I used on both of these areas was the same, and both of these areas started leaking at the exact same time, conveniently after the engine ran hotter than it should have. So I think the heat in the Atlanta traffic melted the RTV, and it started leaking, and now I have to do another rear main seal. Who knows how long this has been like this, and I don't even know if I'm going to replace this, because this is not bad at all. I suppose I should, just so I know when it was last replaced, but there's no way there would only be this much slack in it for 220,000 miles. Like, this has to have been replaced before. I don't know when, and I don't know if I should put an oil slinger on here or not, because it's been fine for at least 3 years like this. I should, for peace of mind once again, but the mysteries of a used vehicle, you know, the mysteries. I have no way to figure out, like, what... I guess I could Carfax it, I suppose. I should do that. But, wow, yeah, I had to rant about this to somebody, and I figured nobody else was going to listen, so I may as well make a video about it so that I don't know, future Wayman, do as you please with this information. So I got the timing chain out and I was expecting to find more answers than questions, and I got more questions than answers, but then I did some research and I found more answers than questions. So here's everything I found out. Now when I took the timing chain cover off, I was expecting a small thrust pin and a spring to pop out that they would ride along that little dimple there in that crater looking thing. It's supposed to be in the center of the bolt that holds the camshaft gear on. This one. Now, as you can see, there is no such thing inside there. This is just a regular old bolt. All the videos I've seen and all the service manuals and everything say that in the middle of this bolt, where that circle is, there's supposed to be a little, like, dowel pin in there and a spring behind it. And when you take off the timing chain cover, you need to be really careful not to lose those things because, well, I still don't understand what they do or why they were there. But anyway, when I took this bolt off, I didn't find any such spring. Now, I did some research, and apparently this is one of those things they changed for no reason in 1999. I found multiple accounts of people with newer Wrangler 4.0s and stuff that not only did not have a thrust pin in the camshaft, but did not have an oil slinger on the crankshaft. So apparently this is all normal. When I took this bolt out, there was oil pressure, like ambient oil pressure behind it. I took it out and oil kind of squirted out of here and ran down the gear and stuff when I was taking it off. And I thought that maybe that bolt had been replaced with, like maybe the original bolt with the hole in the middle and the spring and the dowel pin and everything had been replaced with a bolt that didn't have any of those things because of the ambient oil pressure behind here, but I guess not. I guess all 99 and newer 4.0s just don't have that fancy bolt. They just use a regular one. And the forums that started to figure this out were conflicting torque specs on how tight this bolt needs to be. Some people think 80 foot-pounds and some sources say 50 foot-pounds. Apparently what the difference is whether or not it has a thrust pin in it. So the 98 and older 4.0s, that bolt's going to be 80 foot-pounds, and on the 99 and newer, it's going to be 50 foot-pounds because there's less stuff going on with it. Now, because it came with from the factory without an oil slinger or without this little hole in this bolt, I genuinely do not understand how the timing chain gets its oil. I don't understand where it comes from. But I guess it doesn't need... I don't know. I don't understand. This is very confusing for me. But apparently, I know, well, the gasket is supposed to be there. That's for sure. And was not there. But all this other stuff, I guess that's just how things changed in 2001 for some reason. So the majority of XJ guys don't really know these things because the majority of XJs are not 2001s. So that was an interesting thing I figured out today. So I got the new timing chain in there and the new cover and gasket back on it. And when you put this thing on, you have to install the harmonic balancer to make sure this is lined up properly. Because, I mean, the timing cover is kind of adjustable. These holes are bigger than the bolts that fit in them. So you have to put on the harmonic balancer, then tighten down the bolts. But the thing is, there's two bolts down here, this one and that one, that you can't get to when the harmonic balancer is on here. So you have to take it back off to tighten these two down. Now these two bolts were actually really loose when I took it off. Like they were just, I could get them off with my fingers. I didn't even need a socket. And I think that's because the previous people who did this put the harmonic balancer on there to line it up and then figured it was too much trouble to take it back off to tighten these boys back down. So among other things, whoever put this last timing chain on here was cutting a lot of corners, and even still it ran fine for who knows how many years. So I don't know. Something is missing. It's amazing how many things you can take off this engine and it'll still run. Okay, so everything's back together now. It runs fine. I just went on a little test drive. So here's an overview of everything I did. I had to take out the AC compressor bracket that includes the the fan. I had to take out both fans. Did not have to take off anything in the cooling system, so I didn't just remove the water pump pulley, not the water pump itself. Left the radiator in there. So I don't know why the Haynes manual says you got to take out cooling system components to replace the timing chain, but whatever. Figured while I was in here and had everything apart, I took the opportunity to clean up those two electrical grounds on the side of the engine block right there. I wasn't really having any electrical problems, but it can't hurt to clean off some grounds every now and then, and because there was nothing in the way, I figured may as well go ahead and do that. So let's see, some things I learned. The 99 plus models have a little bit of a different setup when it comes to the timing chain. I did not know that, was not prepared for that. Now I do know that. So there's not a thrust pin in the camshaft bolt. There's not an oil slinger in there, and in my case I did not have a gasket. So I mean, I guess if you have really bad oil leaks on the front of your engine, it might be because whoever professionally did the timing chain last was not professional about it and didn't even bother putting a new gasket on it. So yeah. Now for installing this, I did not use a Harmonic Balancer installing kit. I actually just put a thinner washer on here and was able to thread the bolt in to get it to pull itself on. I know that's not the right way to do it, but I did not know you needed a separate kit for the installation of this than you would for taking it off. And so I didn't have one because I was unprepared, because I didn't do my research like a good mechanic should have. But anyway, got it to work. It's on here. And I don't know, the old one I had wasn't bad, but everybody told me to replace it anyway. And once again, it's one of those peace of mind things. Now I know when it was last replaced. And so hopefully that holds together. Up next is the rear main seal. And I don't know, I think I'm going to tell YouTube that I'm going to make a video on how to do it, because that way I'll actually make a video on how to do it, because I will have said it on the internet, and therefore I can't deny what I said. So future Wayman, you better get on that. So I wasn't planning on this actually being a video on YouTube, and when I do make videos, they're usually constructed a bit more professionally than this, but there you have it. There you have it. Now this, if anybody has any questions about the timing chain or harmonic balancer, now it's a thing I've done and I might be able to help you out. So